evening. You're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. On the program this evening, the former law intern who has accused Justice Ganguly of sexual harassment hits back at his charge that the complaint was a conspiracy to malign him for his judgments against powerful interests, as he put it. As some supporters of Justice Ganguly now allege a witch hunt, is he really the victim here, or is his refusal to resign hurting the institution of the judiciary? Also on the program this evening, we'll be joined in the studio by India's former Consul General to New York, Prabhu Dayal, who himself faced a lawsuit from his maid. Mr. Dayal speaks out on his case and the latest row over the arrest of Devyani Khobragade. But first, the former law intern who accused ex-Supreme Court Judge AK Ganguly of sexual harassment has hit back at him today for denying the charges, while herself not ruling out filing a police complaint. Writing on the Legally India website, she has said that Justice Ganguly was trying to escape accountability. Her comments come a day after Justice Ganguly had written an 8-page letter to the Chief Justice of India, denying he did anything wrong and crying conspiracy. The cabinet, meanwhile, is getting ready to initiate formal proceedings for his removal.
Justice Ganguly out on a morning walk, perhaps unaware that the intern who has claimed sexual harassment had already responded to his letter to the Chief Justice. Ganguly had written about a concerted move to tarnish his image as he had given certain judgments against powerful interests. To that, the intern blogged back saying, "Those who have been spreading rumors and politicizing the issue are doing so out of prejudice and malice to obfuscate the issue and escape scrutiny and accountability." The Trinamool also hit out.
He is claiming, and his few lawyers of the CPM party who are backing him, they are saying that he had delivered a very sensitive judgment. What is that judgment? 2G scam judgment. That judgment was, the main judgment was delivered by Justice Singhvi, not Justice Ganguly.
So did Harish Salve. Justice Ganguly's intemperate allegations against the intern are absurd, he tweeted, while some of those nailed for corruption may be cocking a snook at his discomfiture. To suggest that the intern is acting at their behest is preposterous. Meanwhile, protests in Kolkata by the All India Legal Aid Forum and an ultimatum. If Justice Ganguly does not resign by 6th January, they will not let him enter his Human Rights Office. In Kolkata, with GD Shankar, Monideepa Banerjee, NDTV.
Is there any truth to these conspiracy charges that Justice Ganguly talks about? Is he the victim here? Is he the victim of a witch hunt, as his supporters claim, or is he hurting the institution of the judiciary by not stepping down from the West Bengal Human Rights Commission? Joining us tonight, Indira Jai Singh, the Additional Solicitor General. She joins us this evening from Mumbai. We've got senior lawyer Vrinda Grover here in the studio with us. Also with us, Bikash Bhattacharya, President of the All India Lawyers Union, who has been very vocal in their support of Justice Ganguly. He joins us this evening from Kolkata. And Professor M.D. Nalapat, the former coordinating editor of the Times of India, is with us from Mumbai as well this evening. Ms. Jai Singh, let me come to you first, because among the things that Justice Ganguly has lashed out at in his letter to the Chief Justice yesterday was you. He was very upset at how you were able to produce the law intern's statement and to make it public. He has cited certain discrepancies in the date on which you released it and the date that the affidavit was sworn before a notary. How would you respond specifically, ma'am, firstly to what he has said about you and the intern?
Well, to begin with, you have already cited the blog of the intern, and she has confirmed that I was authorized to release the contents of the affidavit. Secondly, the affidavit does no more than reiterate what she has stated before the committee. There is no variance between the two. Thirdly, the difference in the date can be explained by the fact that obviously, if her statement had to be released, it had to be properly notarized, and that's what it is all about. So I think she has herself effectively answered him. There is no further answer for me to give to that issue. I can only say that I too have acted with great responsibility. It is not that it was put in the public domain just for the sake of putting it into the public domain. I have been repeatedly saying there were voices, powerful voices, including former Chief Justices of India speaking out on his behalf, giving a character credential certificate without even knowing exactly what her allegations were. And this is what made it necessary for me, with her consent, to put it into the public domain.
What would you then say to his allegation that he is being targeted because of certain high-profile judgments that he has made against powerful interests, as he put it, which seems to be a reference to the 2G case? And he has questioned the locus standi of the Supreme Court panel, basically saying, what business did you have to go into this entire matter? Is that in a sense a strange argument that he has made, because he could have chosen not to appear before the panel then? He didn't say it in front of them and now seems to have had an afterthought.
Well, Nidhi, let's separate the two issues. There are two questions here. One is his comments on the panel of the Supreme Court of India. I believe that is a question for the court to answer, and in appropriate proceedings at an appropriate time, that question will be answered by the Supreme Court of India. It's not for me to answer that question. But on the second issue that you mentioned, which I consider more important, the suggestion that there is a conspiracy over here, which is directed at the fact that he gave certain judgments which uphold the rule of law. I'd like to point you to the fact that he's neither the first nor will he be the last person to write judgments of that kind. There have been people, let me give you examples of, let me say, Elliot Spitzer, who was the district attorney in New York, who investigated the huge financial services scam which took place in the United States of America. And yet he was himself caught in a prostitution ring, prosecuted and had to resign. I think these two issues are completely unconnected. I'm not trying here to take away from the fact that he's given a judgment which upholds the rule of law. But when it comes to his moral behavior, when it comes to sexual harassment of interns, we cannot afford to confuse these two issues. They will have to be judged on their own merits.
Okay, let me take that question to Vrinda then. On these 2 points that I asked Indra Jai Singh as well, on the locus standi of this panel and on the fact that he believes that he's being targeted today. He has written very strongly, in fact, about the fact that the report does not have a legal status, the panel's report. The question, though, that has been repeatedly asked since this entire episode happened is whether this is a legal issue or a moral one.
I think it's both now, because the dismissal process towards which the presidential reference is requested for is a legal process. And in fact, at every stage, the former law intern and any of us who have been raising our voice are actually saying, let us follow due process. Let us move in according to procedure as established by law. As far as this particular panel, the 3-judge committee that was set up by the Chief Justice of India, which has given a prima facie finding. Whether that is appropriate or not, he has written to the Chief Justice and to the Supreme Court, and the court will see how they wish to respond to it. He did appear before that committee. He was heard and she was heard, and some affidavits were produced, and there is a prima facie finding before us. It is on the basis of that prima facie finding that we are now saying, can there be a presidential reference to have a full-fledged inquiry in which he will also be given full rights to defend himself, etc. What is now being put out by him, and has actually, I don't know why he's saying he's breaking his silence. Actually, both he and many people on his behalf, in fact, very, very influential people on his behalf, have been speaking out. And they are the ones who are actually creating this conspiracy and trying to completely derail the issue, as well as obstruct anybody who is trying to ask for due process. What is it that they are trying to do? As was mentioned by Ms. Jai Singh, they want to detract from the issue of sexual harassment by a former judge of a former law intern. That is the central question here, and that is the only question on which the focus needs to remain. Yes, he has given judgments which are very important and in public interest, and we have always respected him for those judgments.
But those should not be linked to his moral conduct.
It has nothing to do with it.
And
I think we need to also mention here that that is the nature of violence against women. You can be a celebrated author. You can be a very well-known editor. Is it any different from the defense that was taken by Tarun Tejpal very recently, when he said BJP is targeting for what Tehelka magazine does? Now we have Justice Ganguly saying, 2G, those against whom I've given a judgment are targeting me because of my judgment. Let's separate the two issues. This has nothing to do with it.
We also have Kian Gans, the founder and editor of the Legally India website, that in fact has broken this story with the blog of the law intern concerned, and has also put up her latest post today where she has hit back at Justice Ganguly. Kian, let me ask you, the question people are asking now is what happens next in terms of action to be taken. Many people are saying today what is needed is an impartial investigation. It needs a police probe to take place. In her blog post today, she didn't seem to be ruling that out. What is the sense that you're getting? Do you think that she is any step closer to deciding on a police complaint?
I think it's actually a very nuanced and very complicated question, and it shouldn't be, I don't think we should be putting interpretations of what she should be doing. This is, first of all, allegedly something happened to her, and it has to be her choice of how she wants to proceed. I think it's also a fact that the criminal process is very, very slow and cumbersome, and it's not always favorable to any victims. It can last for years and years and years. It can result in cross-examination, evidence and witnesses can be brought, and victims can actually be attacked also in front of the court and all these kind of things. It's no surprise that rape convictions, for example, in India and everywhere in the world are very, very low. Therefore, I think everyone seems to be, or a lot of people seem to be clamoring for her to file a criminal case, but actually a criminal case might not be the most appropriate thing for her to pursue, might not be the most logical thing to do if she wants to see justice done. I think when she originally wrote the blog, she probably never anticipated how much this would snowball into a major national issue, and that this would actually be taken up. Because a lot of these things, I believe there was, last week there was reported another case of a complaint being made against a judge in the Supreme Court, which one newspaper picked up. And that sort of sat with the Chief Justice, and it wasn't actually taken further.
Kian, let me ask you, you're absolutely right. It's completely her choice about how she wants to proceed with this. And I do have a question for the lawyers on the panel about whether the police needs to take cognizance of this on their own, like they did in Tarun Tejpal's case. But at the moment, it's a very he said, she said kind of story. Putting aside what the Supreme Court panel has said, it's her word against his word against hers. And therefore, the need for there to be a proper investigation into this is critical, isn't it?
I completely agree, and I think that's the way that it's actually happened now, and that is without any action from the intern, and without any action, it just actually spiraled into what is likely to become a presidential reference now. And I think that's actually a very reasonable course to take, because a presidential reference, potentially the Supreme Court has the power to call witnesses and to treat this like a trial, to call evidence, and also to allow Justice Ganguly to present his side, which he claims he hasn't done yet. As far as I understand, that was never the intention of the original panel of the Supreme Court. It was a fact-finding mission to find out whether there is something credible about the allegation that has been made. And that's all that the Supreme Court has done so far, is to say there is a statement and her story checks out from what we can tell. We have not dug into this any further, and therefore I think a presidential reference would fill that gap and would also give the conspiracy theories nothing much left to talk about anymore. Either the panel will decide there's nothing to these allegations, or they will decide there is evidence. And I think in this case there's SMSs allegedly, there's a lot of other alleged victims as well who have not yet come forward, I believe, which corroborate exactly. So if there was actually a presidential reference process taking place, that could actually end up being favorable to the intern or even to justice being seen to be done.
That process may just be beginning very soon, is what we're hearing. But Lord Meghnad Desai joins us tonight as well. And Lord Desai, Subramaniam Swamy has gotten into this entire debate. He's written a letter to the Prime Minister today saying that he seeks his intervention to put an end to the media-driven episode, and that while her complaint needs to be taken seriously, it has to be within the normal safeguards of the Constitution, so there must be an impartial probe. But he says that he can only be removed if he is convicted. He's called it a witch hunt. Lord Desai, is there a danger here? And I'm asking you this, you know, just to step back from all the anger that we've seen in the press about this. But is there a danger here really that this has become a trial by media? Because many people are saying he hasn't actually been convicted of anything. He may have a legal leg to stand on. Morally, it's another question. What do you think?
I think, first of all, I'm very surprised that the Supreme Court had a fact-finding mission and all that stuff. All that needed to be done was the victim to file a police complaint. I presume that's the procedure. Police would have investigated, and just as the Tarun Tejpal case, things would have proceeded according to due procedure. Now, why we have got this very peculiar circuitous way, just because a man is a retired Supreme Court justice, well, he's still just a citizen. Even if he was a serving Supreme Court justice, he is a citizen, he is subject to the rule of law. And if the case is of harassment, then he being a justice is neither here nor there. Let us have it investigated and let's have him properly prosecuted. You know, this thing is happening by media because nobody is doing the proper simple thing.
Okay, so you believe that this would all be settled if there was a police complaint. Let me take that to Indira Jaisingh before I come to the rest of the panel. Ma'am, on this issue of a police complaint, of course it's her choice, but shouldn't the police have taken cognizance of this on their own? They were very quick in Mr. Tejpal's case. Why not here?
Nidhi, first of all, let me tell you, I'm here because I consider this to be a national issue. This is not an issue which concerns the intern alone. I have been saying repeatedly, what is at stake over here is the credibility of the Supreme Court as an institution. And this is the reason why I wrote the letter to the Prime Minister of India saying that we need a process to be put in place for the removal of a person who's heading a human rights institution when he stands accused of an allegation of sexual harassment. Forget the three-judge committee. Let's assume there was none over here. Let's just look at a situation in which an intern actually makes an allegation that she has been sexually harassed by a person who's presently heading a human rights commission. What would we do in that situation? There is a law. There is due process. That has to be looked into. Now, all that has happened is that the committee of 3 judges has actually looked into this allegation. It's like a screening process. Is there some truth in the allegation, or is it just one of those wild, frivolous allegations? And what they're saying is, considering that she has backed it up with phone records, with SMSs, with other witnesses to whom she's spoken, there is a case to look into. Now, the only question is, which is the forum in which this case is going to be looked into? My letter to the Prime Minister says it has to be a process of removal from office. I, for one, cannot understand how a man accused of sexual harassment can head a human rights institution. It defies my intelligence and imagination. This is the reason why I wrote the letter, and we're here discussing public interest, we are here discussing national interest. We are not discussing Justice Ganguly's rights over here. We are looking at the rights, we are looking at the credibility of a national institution. Okay. Secondly, Justice Ganguly will have his day in court. Please let me finish. Yeah. Justice Ganguly deserves his day in court. He will have his day in court. It's that particular day in court that he's seeking to avoid. And let me tell you, if I can't say whether there'll be a presidential reference or not. My job begins and ends with saying that I would like to see one, which is what the reason for my writing to the Prime Minister. But if and when there is a reference, let me tell you, there is a full-fledged hearing. She will still have to come and substantiate her claim and be subjected to cross-examination by Justice Ganguly. And then he will have his day in court. So what are we talking about over here? Who is interested in denying him due process? No one is interested in denying him due process. What he's actually doing is hiding from the law. And I think we as a nation cannot countenance this.
Okay, let me take that to Mr. Bhattacharya. Ma'am, let me just take that to Mr.
Nidhi, let me just finish one. Let me just finish one last thing. Insofar as putting information in the public domain is concerned, I think it is the duty of all right-minded people to raise the issue, what are judges doing, and in particular, what has Justice Ganguly done? People of this country have a right to know.